Welcome back to 60 Minutes. Well, by any measure, this is an unusual election year. With more than 200 days till polling day, it's the longest campaign in Australian history. Then there's a growing uncertainty over the leaders. With Prime Minister Julia Gillard languishing even deeper in the polls, a spectacular comeback by Kevin Rudd is now a very real prospect. And would that force the Liberals to dump Tony Abbott in favour of the more popular Malcolm Turnbull? Well, if anyone understands the ins and outs of political leadership, it is John Howard. And I sat down with a former PM to discuss the wild political ride that will be 2013.
Gary Chris, doing good business.
Yes.
How's Laura?
She's really well.
Yeah.
The trials and the tribulations, the winning and the losing is something John Howard knows everything about.
Good to see you. Hello. Good day. How are you?
If there's a spring in his step,
Good to see you.
it's because politics are in season.
Hello.
And right now, anything might happen.
Hello.
We're a long way out from the election, but Rudd is probably going to move, isn't he? He's looking like it. What does your nose tell you?
Oh, yeah, I don't think he's ever given up the idea of coming back, and that's human nature and understandable. I think there's a real possibility they'll bring him back. In the end, leadership is determined by the laws of arithmetic, and even the most popular leaders can be removed if people think they're going to do better under another one.
And the laws of arithmetic say that Gillard can't win, but Rudd can.
Well, that is the indication of some of the polls. I've met many Labor Party people who just can't work out why their party should have got rid of somebody who won an election.
Now, if Rudd seizes leadership and maintains his public popularity in the polls leading to an election, does that put pressure on Tony Abbott because his popularity is not good? Does that put pressure on his job?
Well, there are a lot of suppositions.
So nothing's set in stone?
No, hang on. No. I didn't say that. I don't believe for a moment that the Liberal Party will be led at the next election by anybody other than Tony Abbott.
Not Malcolm Turnbull?
No, I don't believe so.
The sun's hardly up. And he's on his way to a Today Show appearance with Australian of the Year, Ita Buttrose.
On the floor, everyone!
Even without the authority of office, in these uncertain times, John Howard's opinions are eagerly sought.
Would you like to have been Prime Minister of a hung parliament?
No, I don't think I would have been, though. I think I'd have, managed to either win conventionally or lose.
This is a perk of out of office.
Yes, it is. Kindly provided to former Prime Ministers.
I mean, obviously, you must miss being Prime Minister.
Oh, yes. People often ask me that question, and the honest only answer is yes, I do. But I quickly add, I've adjusted.
A lot of people lately have been coming up and saying, why don't you come back?
A few do that, yeah, that's true. and then every so often you get a string of them, and then you get somebody who brings you back to reality, comes up and jabs me in the chest and says, war criminal.
33 years in politics, dumped as leader, then miraculously resurrected to serve 4 terms as Prime Minister. His career is testament to the power of political ambition and a clear lesson for Kevin Rudd. You don't think there's anything wrong with ambition, do you?
There is nothing disloyal about ambition. I had ambition. Openly ambitious I was. And there's nothing disloyal about it. You are disloyal if you betray the values and the principles of your party, or if you behave with deliberate deceit.
And no one should ever be forced to say, I will never stand.
No, you don't. I once had an argument with my own party on that many years ago. I don't think anybody of ability and ambition should ever be forced to say there are no circumstances under which I will seek the leadership of my party.
You almost can hardly even say that.
Well, exactly. I can almost hardly not say. You're dead right. I mean, it is just... See, one of the things you've got to accept about a political party is that there will always be competition for its leadership.
Can we talk about the vindictiveness in Parliament? Don't you think it's rougher now?
Look, I think the intensity of the language, but it's been on both sides. I mean, the things that have been said about Tony Abbott and the remarks that have been made, frankly, his attitude to women. I mean, this argument that he's got a problem with women is complete nonsense.
A lot of women polled seem to think that he has a problem.
Well, if you keep saying something like that from one side of politics, some people will believe it.
What does Jeanette think?
Well, if you want to get Jeanette's opinion, you ask her.
I'm too scared.
No, that's right. No, I respect my wife too much to ever presume to answer on her behalf.
Mr. Howard, what is your opinion on independents, such as the Greens, possessing the balance of power?
The problem of having a finely...
And so to a Year 12 economics class, where the former PM hopes Australians vote more decisively this time around.
There is great virtue in having a clear-cut result from an election.
Some independents deserve to get back?
Well, I don't think either of the independents who support the government deserve to get back. I hope both Oakeshott and Windsor lose their seats because the political predisposition of those two electorates was not to support the current government but rather to support the opposition, and they didn't take any notice of that, and I'd like to see both of those seats come back to the National Party.
If there's one policy for which John Howard will long be remembered, it's his uncompromising approach to border security. And he's still not holding back about holding them back. The Labor Party's pretty much come round to your Pacific solution again, haven't they? So why isn't it working now?
Well, because once you let the genie out of the bottle, to use that old expression, it's extremely hard to put it back, particularly when all of the things that kept it in the bottle in the first place have not been embraced by the current government. They haven't embraced temporary protection visas.
So it'll be harder for Tony too.
It will be hard, of course, because we will have had several years of porous borders. Of course it will be hard.
Tony Abbott says we'll turn back the boats. Now, it's a catchy slogan, but is that all it is? Did you ever order a boat to be turned around?
Oh, yes, we did. In 2001, some boats were towed back.
It's a hard thing as a Prime Minister to order an Australian naval officer to step onto a boat which is full of human beings, men, women and children, and to tell them we're turning around and sending
Yes, that is hard.
That's hard for a serving officer.
Look,
the people who order that are back in Canberra.
Yeah, I accept all that. That is always the case when governments ask their military personnel to do difficult, dangerous, sometimes life-taking things. I understand that very clearly.
Sometimes inhumane things.
Yes. But you say it's a hard thing to do that. It's also a hard thing to say to somebody who's been waiting 10 years or something in a refugee camp and who's been told they're a legitimate refugee, but there's no place in Australia for you because that place has been taken by somebody who jumped the queue.
Can I talk about workplace reform?
Sure.
Can I use the term work choices?
Yeah, you can use any term you like.
I mean, do you think right now Tony Abbott doesn't want to go into this election looking too much like he's still got work choices in his mind?
Well, I think Tony Abbott wants more flexibility in our industrial relations system. He said that. And in fairness to him, I confine myself to defending what my government did, and that's quite a proper, legitimate thing for a former Prime Minister to do. What Tony Abbott decides to do is a matter for him. But speaking for myself, I'm very proud of what we did in the area of industrial relations, very proud.
The only thing I wonder about exercise, why it has to happen so early in the morning.
I just find this is the time of the day that has always suited me better.
Back in 1996, John Howard Power walked into government while keeping his policies secret until just before the election. Now, the Master's Apprentice, Tony Abbott, is doing the same thing. And if the current polls are right, he'll follow in his mentor's footsteps into the lodge. Is Tony Abbott really the love child of Bronwyn Bishop and John Howard?
That's his florid rhetoric. He has a close association with both of us, and I'm an undisguised supporter of Tony's. I think he's got enormous ability.
And, of course, you said of Tony that the greatest thing you can do as a leader of the opposition is to get a Prime Minister's scalp.
Well, he got Kevin Rudd's scalp. I mean, it has to be understood that the real story...
It's a pretty visceral business, isn't it?
The real story of the last 3 years is that if anybody other than Tony Abbott had been leading the Liberal Party, Kevin Rudd would have remained leader of the Labor Party and would have won the last election, in my opinion, with a comfortable majority. That, in my opinion, is why Abbott's position is so strong.
And before you start shouting bias, we have also asked to sit down with Bob Hawke and Paul Keating to discuss this election year. We're also